Pay attention to the Ring camera footage from a Morgan Hill home on the morning of June 29, 2025. An 18-year-old girl in gray pajama pants and an oversized sweatshirt walks through the hallway beside a man in a brown long-sleeve shirt and red sweatpants. Her posture is slightly turned away. Her arms hold items close to her chest like a barrier. His body occupies the space beside her, close enough that their shoulders nearly touch. Marissa DiNapoli has less than 24 hours left to live.
Video obtained by Action News 8 shows Mendoza and DiNapoli leaving his Morgan Hill home more than a week ago on a Sunday morning.
The surveillance timestamp reads 9:45 a.m. Investigators would later say the two appeared to be arguing.
Why you love me? So why would you text your ex?
Nothing about the footage looks violent. Nothing looks urgent. It looks like an ordinary Sunday morning. It was the last confirmed moment Marissa was ever seen alive. Martin Mendoza Jr., 19, her ex-boyfriend, the man she had already tried to leave, walks beside her toward the door. Within hours, her phone would go silent. Her family's calls would go unanswered. A missing person. Investigation would begin. And days later, her body would be discovered near Anderson Lake, stabbed multiple times in the back.
First, the tragic updates in the case of a missing 18-year-old.
Yeah, one day after Marissa DiNapoli was found dead near the Anderson Lake Bridge, her friends and family are holding a vigil.
This is not a mystery about where she went. This is the story of what happens when someone tries to end a relationship, and the moment that decision becomes fatal. The Ring camera didn't capture a murder, it captured the most dangerous moment in an abusive relationship, the moment someone tries to leave. If cases like this one matter to you, if you believe these stories deserve to be told with care, subscribe now, because staying silent means these names disappear, and Marissa DiNapoli's story is far from over. Marissa DiNapoli was 18 years old. She had just crossed the threshold that separates childhood from everything that comes after. In Morgan Hill, California, a quiet city nestled in the southern reaches of Santa Clara County, she was known to her family as someone bright, someone present, someone who still came home. She was not a headline. Yet, she was a daughter, a sister, a young woman standing at the edge of adulthood with all of its ordinary uncertainties still ahead of her. At 18, life is defined by transition. High school ends, relationships shift, the people you thought you knew, including yourself, begin to change shape. Marissa was navigating all of it. She was close to her family, still tethered to the rhythms of home, even as she tested the boundaries of independence. And like so many young women her age, she was trying to move on from a relationship that no longer served her. She believed she could make that choice and walk away cleanly. She believed the hardest part was already behind her. What Marissa could not have known, what no one could have predicted with certainty, was that the decision to leave would become the most dangerous moment of her life. Not because leaving was wrong, but because some people do not accept being left. In the weeks before she disappeared, Marissa was not running from anything. She was walking toward something: independence, clarity, a future she had every right to claim. She was 18 years old. She should have had decades ahead of her. Instead, she became a name attached to a case file, a timestamp on a surveillance camera, and a question that would haunt everyone who loved her. The relationship between Marissa DiNapoli and Martin Mendoza Jr. did not end with a single conversation. It ended the way many relationships do at that age, through distance, through tension, through the slow realization that something once familiar had become something else entirely. Mendoza was 19. He and Marissa had been together, and then they were not. The details of what passed between them in those final weeks remain partially obscured by the limits of what investigators could reconstruct. But the shape of the story is familiar. She wanted out. He, allegedly, did not want to let go. For many young women, the decision to leave a relationship feels like the end of a chapter. It feels like closure. It feels like the moment you reclaim your own direction. But research into intimate partner violence tells a different story. The period immediately after a breakup, especially when one partner resists the separation, is statistically the most dangerous time in an abusive dynamic. It is the moment when control is threatened, when the illusion of possession begins to fracture. when some individuals escalate rather than release. Marissa, by all accounts, believed she was doing something ordinary. She was ending a relationship. She was asserting her right to choose differently. She told her family she planned to stay with a friend and return home the following day. It was not a dramatic exit. It was not a confrontation. It was the kind of quiet, unremarkable decision that young people make all the time. But what Marissa understood as an ending, investigators would later allege, Mendoza interpreted as something else entirely. She thought she was walking away. He, prosecutors now claim, had already decided she never would. The Ring camera inside the Trail Drive residence recorded them at 9:45 a.m. on Sunday, June 29, 2025. The footage is mundane. A hallway, a curved staircase with wrought iron railings, potted plants, a television mounted on the wall, displaying a calm, muted landscape. The lighting is soft, the setting is domestic, and walking through the frame are two people. Marissa DiNapoli wears gray and white striped pajama pants and an oversized gray sweatshirt. Her long, dark hair falls past her shoulders. She carries a phone in one hand and what appears to be clothing draped over her arm. Her posture is slightly turned inward, her body angled away from the man beside her. She does not look at the camera. She does not look at him. Martin Mendoza Jr. wears a brown long-sleeve shirt and bright red sweatpants. He walks close to her, close enough that their arms nearly brush. His expression is neutral, unreadable. His presence fills the space beside her. Investigators would later describe the interaction as tense. They would say the two appeared to be arguing, but the footage itself shows no raised voices.
Why would you do that to me? I think you love me. So why would you text your ex?
No visible aggression, no moment that would make a casual viewer pause. That is what makes it so unsettling. The danger is invisible. The threat is ambient. The camera captures proximity, not violence, and yet something in the frame feels wrong. This is the last verified moment Marissa DiNapoli was seen alive. Within hours, her phone would fall silent. Her messages would go unanswered. The family waiting for her to come home would begin to wonder why she hadn't called. The Ring camera did not capture what happened next, but it captured enough. It captured her walking beside the man she had already tried to leave.
Video obtained by Action News 8 shows Mendoza and DiNapoli leaving his Morgan Hill home more than a week ago on a Sunday morning.
It captured the final proof of life. Marissa had told her family she would be home the next day. When that day passed with no call, no message, no sign of her, concern began to build. At first, it was the kind of worry that tries to explain itself away. Maybe her phone died. Maybe she lost track of time. Maybe she would walk through the door any minute with an apology and an ordinary explanation. But the minutes stretched into hours. The hours stretched into silence. Calls to Marissa's phone went unanswered. Texts sat unread. The digital trail that usually connected her to the people who loved her had gone dark. Her family contacted friends. They asked questions. They retraced what little they knew about her plans. And as each answer came back empty, the fear sharpened. By June 30th, Marissa DiNapoli was officially reported missing. The Morgan Hill Police Department opened a case. Investigators began collecting information: who she was with, where she had been, what she had said before she disappeared. The Ring camera footage from Trail Drive surfaced almost immediately. It placed Marissa with Martin Mendoza Jr. on the morning of the 29th. It showed them leaving together. It showed her walking toward the door she would never walk back through. At this stage, the case was still classified as a missing person investigation, but the silence that followed her disappearance was not the silence of someone who had simply gone off-grid. It was the silence of someone who could no longer answer. The search for Marissa DiNapoli began with urgency and expanded with dread. Flyers circulated through Morgan Hill. Social media posts spread her photograph, her description, the last known details of her movements. A community that had known her as a neighbor, a classmate, a familiar face now knew her as someone missing. Law enforcement escalated quickly. The Morgan Hill Police Department coordinated with the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office. Investigators began building a digital timeline, phone records, location data, surveillance footage from nearby residences and businesses. The Ring camera footage from Trail Drive became the anchor point. It established that Marissa had been with Mendoza on the morning of June 29th. It established that they had left together, and it established that whatever happened next occurred after they walked out of frame. Search teams fanned out across areas connected to Marissa's last known movements. Volunteers joined the effort. Every sighting, every tip, every fragment of information was logged and cross-referenced. As the hours passed, the nature of the search began to shift. This was no longer a case of a teenager who had failed to check in. The silence was too complete, the timeline too compressed, the circumstances too heavy with implication. Investigators focused on phone location data. The digital trail allegedly placed Marissa and Mendoza traveling together in the hours after they left Trail Drive. The direction of travel pointed away from Morgan Hill, toward the outskirts, toward open land, toward Anderson Lake. Marissa's story deserves to be told completely. If you've made it this far, you already understand why these cases matter. Subscribing means you'll be here when justice is finally decided. It costs nothing, and it ensures that Marissa's name isn't forgotten before her case is closed. And on July 2nd, the search found what no one wanted to find. The body was found near a picnic area. On July 2nd, 2025, search teams working the rugged terrain around Anderson Lake made the discovery that transformed a missing person case.
This was a group effort. A lot of people, strangers that I didn't even know, came and, they volunteered to go and search for my sister. Obviously, the best case scenario would have been a different outcome, but just the fact that we were
into a homicide investigation. The location was public, a place where families gathered on summer weekends, where hikers paused to rest, where the ordinary rhythms of life played out against a backdrop of hills and water. Now it was a crime scene. Marissa DiNapoli had been dead for days. The following day, the Santa Clara County Coroner's Office confirmed what investigators already suspected. The remains belonged to Marissa. She was 18 years old. She had been stabbed multiple times in the back. The manner of death was classified as homicide. In that confirmation, everything shifted. The ring camera footage from Trail Drive, once just a piece of surveillance, became the final timestamp of a life. The argument that investigators described was no longer a moment of tension. It was the prelude to something irreversible. Marissa had walked out of that house believing she was ending a chapter. She did not know she was walking toward the end of everything. The setting of the discovery added its own weight. Anderson Lake is not remote in the way crime stories often suggest. It is accessible, frequented, known. The choice to leave a body there, near a picnic area, in a place where anyone might stumble upon it, suggested either haste or indifference. Either way, it suggested something had gone terribly wrong in the hours between the ring camera footage and the moment Marissa stopped breathing. For her family, the confirmation was the collapse of hope. The waiting was over. The worst had arrived.
Thank you to the entire community from Morgan Hill, Santa Clara County, San Jose. This was a group effort. A lot of people, strangers that I didn't even know, came and, they volunteered to go and search for my sister. Obviously, the best case scenario would have been a different outcome, but just the fact that we were able to find her.
For investigators, it was the beginning of a different phase. The question was no longer where Marissa had gone. The question was who had taken her there and why. In the absence of eyewitnesses, technology testified. Investigators reconstructed Marissa DiNapoli's final hours using the digital trails that modern life leaves behind. Phone location data became the silent witness that placed her movements in time and space, filling gaps that no human observer could. The evidence allegedly showed Marissa and Martin Mendoza Jr. traveling together after they left the Trail Drive residence on the morning of June 29th. The direction of travel pointed away from Morgan Hill, away from the neighborhoods and streets where Marissa was known, toward the open land surrounding Anderson Lake. The data painted a picture of two people moving in the same direction at the same time. It could not show what was said between them. It could not capture the tone of their voices or the expressions on their faces, but it established proximity. It established trajectory, and it established that wherever Marissa went in those final hours, she did not go alone. For prosecutors, this digital timeline became foundational. In a case without surveillance footage of the crime itself, without witnesses who could place the defendant at the scene of violence, the phone data provided the connective tissue between the last confirmed sighting and the location where Marissa's body was found. The technology did not dramatize. It documented. It showed Mendoza's phone traveling the same route at the same time toward the same destination. It showed the convergence of two paths that ended at a picnic area where an 18-year-old girl was stabbed and left behind. The digital evidence could not prove intent. That was a question for a courtroom, but it could establish presence. It could establish movement, and it could narrow the field of possibility until only one name remained at the center of the investigation. Martin Mendoza Jr. was now the primary suspect. As the investigation tightened, Mendoza allegedly ran. In the days following Marissa's disappearance, before her body was discovered, before the full weight of the evidence became public, investigators noted that Mendoza was no longer in Morgan Hill. He was no longer in Santa Clara County. He was no longer, it seemed, in the United States. Surveillance footage and border records later confirmed what authorities suspected. Mendoza's vehicle was seen crossing at the San Isidro port of entry, the busiest land border crossing between California and Mexico. The timing was not coincidental. To investigators, the flight spoke louder than any alibi could have. Innocent people do not cross international borders in the middle of a missing person investigation involving their ex-girlfriend. Innocent people do not disappear when the questions start to close in. The decision to flee reframed everything. What had been a case built on circumstantial evidence and digital timelines now carried the additional weight of apparent consciousness of guilt. Mendoza was not waiting to be cleared. He was not cooperating with investigators. He was running. The manhunt that followed stretched across jurisdictions. U.S. Marshals coordinated with border authorities and Mexican law enforcement. The search for Marissa DiNapoli had ended in tragedy. Now, a second search began, this time for the man accused of ending her life. He had crossed the border believing perhaps that distance would equal safety. He was wrong. They found him near the border. On July 9, 2025, 10 days after Marissa DiNapoli was last seen alive, U.S. Marshals apprehended Martin Mendoza Jr. in the area near the California-Mexico crossing.
Arrested 20-year-old Martin Mendoza of Morgan Hill, now charged with the murder of his ex-girlfriend, 18-year-old Marissa DiNapoli. Mendoza arrested Sunday as he tried to re-enter the U.S. through Mexico.
The details of the capture were not publicly dramatized. There was no standoff, no prolonged chase. There was simply an end to the running. Mendoza was taken into custody and transported back to Santa Clara County. The young man who had appeared in Ring camera footage beside Marissa, close, tense, unreadable, now appeared in custody images looking different, restrained, expressionless, separated from the context of normalcy that had once surrounded him. The arrest marked the closure of the investigative phase and the beginning of the legal process. Mendoza was no longer a person of interest. He was not a suspect awaiting questioning. He was a defendant facing the most serious charge California can bring. For Marissa's family, the arrest offered no relief, only the grim confirmation that the system was moving forward. Their daughter was gone. No arrest could undo that. For investigators, it was the culmination of days of work, surveillance footage, phone data, search efforts, cross-border coordination, and the relentless assembly of a case built on digital evidence and alleged flight. The man accused of killing Marissa DiNapoli was now in a cell. What remained was the question of what would happen next. Martin Mendoza Jr. was charged with first-degree murder with a deadly weapon enhancement. The charges reflected the prosecution's theory of the case, that Marissa DiNapoli's death was not an accident, not a moment of sudden violence, but a deliberate act committed with premeditation and a knife. The enhancement added weight to the allegations, signaling that the weapon itself would be a central element of the trial. At his arraignment, Mendoza was ordered held without bail. The court determined that the severity of the charges and the circumstances of his alleged flight made him too great a risk to release. He would remain in custody as the case moved toward trial. As of early 2026, no verdict has been reached. The case remains open, charged but unresolved, suspended between accusation and judgment. Mendoza is presumed innocent until proven guilty. The evidence will be tested. The defense will be heard. A jury will decide. But for Marissa DiNapoli, there is no suspension. There is no waiting for resolution. She was 18 years old. She tried to leave a relationship. She believed she could walk away and begin again. She was wrong about what that choice would cost her. The Ring camera footage remains. The phone data remains. The memory of a young woman who should have had decades ahead of her remains. And somewhere in Santa Clara County, a courtroom waits to render the judgment that Marissa will never hear. This story does not end with a sentence. It ends with a question still unanswered and a family still waiting for the only justice the system can now provide.